I gave my mom the perfect Mother's Day gift, then watched her face as she realized what it really meant. My mom always bragged about being practically psychic when it came to her kids. She'd call right when we needed her, somehow knew when we were lying, claimed she had this special mom intuition that other parents just didn't possess. Growing up, it was equal parts annoying and impressive. She'd catch me sneaking out before I even made it to the front door. She'd pack extra lunch money on random days that turned out to be exactly when I'd forget mine. She always seemed to know precisely what we needed, when we needed it, like she could read our minds. "It's a mother's gift," she'd say with this knowing smile. "You'll understand when you have kids someday." But when I turned 18 and moved out for college, something started feeling really wrong about her supposedly supernatural abilities. She'd text me literally seconds after I got bad news. She'd show up at my apartment with soup when I was getting sick, but before I told anyone I wasn't feeling well. At first I thought maybe she really did have some kind of sixth sense. Maybe being a mother for 18 years had fine-tuned her instincts to an almost supernatural level. But then the coincidences became too frequent, too precise, too impossible to explain away with maternal intuition alone. She knew about my breakup before I posted about it on social media. She knew I changed jobs before I told anyone in the family. She even knew about the minor fender bender I had in a grocery store parking lot that I'd specifically decided not to mention to avoid worrying her unnecessarily. So this year for Mother's Day, I decided to test her psychic abilities in a very special way. I spent weeks meticulously preparing the perfect gift for her special day. I bought her a gorgeous antique jewelry box from her favorite vintage store downtown, the exact kind she'd been admiring and hinting about for months. But instead of filling it with the jewelry she was expecting, I put something much more meaningful and revealing inside. 23 devices total. Every single AirTag I'd found sewn into my backpack, jacket linings, and even my shoes. 3 hidden cameras that had been disguised as phone chargers in my apartment. GPS trackers that were magnetically attached to my car in places I never would have thought to look. But that wasn't all. I also included detailed printouts of my phone records, showing she'd somehow managed to clone my SIM card 6 months ago. Screenshots of the spy app she'd secretly installed on my laptop during Thanksgiving break. Photos I'd taken of her car parked across the street from my workplace, my gym, and even outside my friends' houses. The documentation was thorough, organized, and absolutely damning. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Open it up. I know you're going to absolutely love what's inside. I watched her face go through every possible human emotion as she opened that jewelry box. First confusion, as she saw the strange collection of electronics. Then recognition as she realized what she was looking at. Then shock, as the full scope of her surveillance operation became clear. Finally, this weird, guilty smile crept across her face, like she'd been caught red-handed, but was still proud of her cleverness. "Honey, listen, I can explain all of this." "No need to explain," I interrupted, smiling sweetly. "Your psychic powers are absolutely incredible, Mom. You even somehow knew that I'd eventually figure out your little operation." She tried to laugh it off nervously, making some joke about being an overprotective parent, but I wasn't finished with my Mother's Day surprise yet. "Oh, and there's one more thing, Mom. Yesterday, while you were at your book club meeting, I took the liberty of switching all those tracking devices over to Dad's stuff instead." The color drained from her face. Like literally, she went pale. Her hands started shaking as she set the jewelry box down on the coffee table between us. Dad was in the kitchen getting coffee, completely oblivious to what was happening in the living room. You didn't," she whispered. "Oh, I absolutely did," I said, keeping my voice cheerful and light. "I figured if your maternal intuition is so strong with me, it must work with Dad too, right? I mean, you've been married for 25 years. Surely you don't need tracking devices to know where your own husband is?" She stood up so fast, her chair nearly tipped over. "You had no right." "No right?" I cut her off. "Mom, you put a tracker in my underwear drawer. In my actual underwear. Do you understand how insane that is?" Dad walked in right then, holding his coffee mug with the world's best dad print that I'd gotten him years ago. "What's going on?" I heard raised voices. Mom and I just stared at each other. The jewelry box sat between us like evidence at a crime scene. Dad looked from me to her, then down at the box, then back to us. "Is that the gift you were so excited about?" he asked me. "Open it, Dad," I said quietly. "I think you should see what's inside." Mom made the small sound, almost like a whimper, but she didn't try to stop him. Dad set his coffee down and picked up the jewelry box. I watched his face as he took inventory of the contents. He didn't look shocked though. He looked tired, so incredibly tired. How long have you known? Mom asked him, her voice barely audible. Dad pulled out one of the AirTags, turned it over in his fingers. Known for sure? About 3 years. Suspected? Longer. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Wait, what? He sat down heavily in his chair, still holding the AirTag. I found one in my gym bag about 3 years back. Thought it was weird, confronted your mother about it. She cried for hours, said she was just worried about me, that her friend's husband had died of a heart attack at the gym and she couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop worrying. He looked at Mom with this expression I couldn't quite read. Sadness, maybe. Or resignation. She looked so terrified of being alone, so genuinely panicked at the thought of something happening to me that I just let it go. You let it go, I repeated, trying to process this. I thought if I just played along, eventually she'd realize she didn't need to do this, that she'd feel secure enough to stop. He laughed, but it was hollow. Clearly I was wrong. Mom was crying now, silent tears running down her face. She wasn't even trying to hide it or wipe them away. I'm sorry, she said, looking at both of us. I'm so sorry. I needed to know. I needed to be sure. Sure about what? I asked. And that's when she said something I'll never forget. Mom went quiet, then started laughing through tears. Fine, we're doing this now. She sat down looking almost relieved. Doing what? I asked. She wiped her eyes. Your father has never cheated on me, not once. But I've been tracking him for 9 years like he has. I felt cold. Why? She looked at me with shame and relief mixed together. Because if he's the villain, then I'm not the problem. I can be the victim instead of just someone who's unhappy for no reason. Her voice dropped. I've been building a case for an affair that doesn't exist because being betrayed is easier to explain than being unsatisfied with a good man. Dad was staring at his coffee mug like it held the answers to the universe. His jaw was tight, and I could see a muscle twitching near his temple. Mom kept going, the words pouring out now like she'd been holding them in for years. Every time you come home late from work, I check the GPS. Every time you go to the gym, I track how long you're actually there. I've memorized your patterns, your routes, your timing down to the minute. I've driven past that gym at least 100 times, looking for your car in the wrong part of the parking lot, looking for evidence of literally anything that would prove I'm right to feel this way. Feel what way? I asked quietly. She looked at me with hollow eyes. Empty. I feel empty, and I don't know why, and I can't fix it. So I needed it to be his fault. If he was cheating, then at least I'd have a reason. At least there'd be something concrete to point to and say, that's why I am unhappy. That's why I spend my days waiting for something to happen. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear the kitchen clock ticking, could hear a car driving past outside, could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. And what about me? I finally asked. What was I? Just another project to fill your time? Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. No, sweetie, you don't understand. Then help me understand, I said, my voice rising. Help me understand why you put tracking devices in my clothes, why you cloned my phone, why you've been basically stalking me for years. Was that about making sure Dad wasn't cheating too? Because I'm pretty sure I wasn't. Anywhere near Dad's gym or his office or wherever you thought he was meeting his imaginary mistress. I just wanted to know you were safe, she said weakly. Bullshit. The word came out harder than I intended, but I didn't take it back. If you wanted to know I was safe, you'd call and ask. You wouldn't track my every movement like I'm a criminal on house arrest. You wouldn't watch me through hidden cameras in my own apartment. That's not about safety, Mom. That's about control. Dad finally spoke, his voice rough. She's right, you know. This isn't about keeping anyone safe. This is about you not knowing what to do with yourself. Mom turned to him, eyes wide. That's not fair, isn't it? Dad set the AirTag down on the table with a soft click. When was the last time you did something for yourself? When was the last time you saw your friends, or took that pottery class you kept talking about, or hell, even read a book that wasn't about parenting or relationships? Mom opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. You don't have an answer, Dad finished for her, because you don't do those things. You just watch us, monitor us, live through us. That's not true, Mom protested, but her voice lacked conviction. I thought about the last few years, really thought about it. The constant text asking what I was doing, where I was going, who I was with, the unexpected visits to my apartment, always with some excuse about being in the neighborhood, the way she'd grill me about every detail of my day, taking mental notes like she was writing a biography. When I got promoted last year, I said slowly, you barely said congratulations. You asked if it meant I'd be working longer hours, if I'd still have time to visit on weekends. Mom's face crumpled. I was worried about you overworking yourself, but when I told you I was having trouble with my coworker, you called me 3 times that day. I continued. You wanted to know everything. What she said, how I responded, what I was going to do about it. You were more interested in my problems than my achievements. I was just trying to help. No, I interrupted. You were trying to be needed. There's a difference. Dad was nodding slowly, like pieces were finally finally clicking into place for him too. That's why you always just happened to call when I mentioned having a rough day at work, why you'd suddenly have so many questions and want to talk for hours. But when I got that big promotion, you changed the subject after 5 minutes. Mom stood up abruptly. I can't do this right now, I need some air. She walked out of the room, and a minute later, I heard the back door open and close. Dad and I sat there in silence, looking at the jewelry box full of surveillance equipment. I should have done something sooner, Dad said quietly. I knew it was getting worse, but I kept thinking, I don't know what I was thinking, that she'd snap out of it, that ignoring it would make it go away? You were trying to keep the peace? I said. I was being a coward. He picked up one of the tiny cameras, examined it closely. This one's pretty sophisticated. Must have cost a decent amount. He looked at me. How'd you find them all? I hired someone, I admitted. A guy who does security sweeps for people who think they're being stalked. Cost me $800, but he found every single device within 2 hours, even the ones I never would have thought to look for. Jesus. Dad rubbed his face with both hands. I don't even want to know how much she spent on all this over the years. Probably less than she would have spent on therapy, I said. He laughed, but it was bitter. You're not wrong. We could see Mom through the kitchen window, pacing back and forth in the backyard. Her arms were wrapped around herself like she was cold, even though it was a warm May afternoon. What are you gonna do? I asked Dad. He was quiet for a long time. I don't know. Part of me wants to pack a bag and leave, just to see what happens. But another part of me feels like that would be abandoning someone who's clearly not okay. He looked at me. What would you do? I didn't have an answer for that. Mom came back inside about 10 minutes later. Her eyes were red, but she'd stopped crying. She sat down in her chair and looked at both of us. I know I need help, she said simply. I know this isn't normal. I know I've crossed so many lines that I can't even see where the boundaries were supposed to be anymore. She took a shaky breath. But I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to just be without knowing where you are, what you're doing, if you're okay. The not knowing makes me feel like I'm drowning. That's called anxiety, Mom, I said gently. And there are actual healthy ways to deal with it that don't involve invading people's privacy. I know. She looked down at her hands. I've known for a while, actually. But admitting it felt like admitting I'd wasted years obsessing over nothing. Like I'd put you both through all of this for no reason. And now he's going to find all this and realize his wife spent a decade trying to catch him doing something wrong. And when he asks why I wanted him to be guilty, I'll have to admit, I needed him to be the reason I'm miserable, instead of facing that something's just broken in me. Those words hung in the air like smoke. Dad's knuckles went white around his coffee mug. Broken, he repeated softly. You think something's broken in you? I don't know what else to call it, Mom said, her voice cracking. Normal people don't do this. Normal people don't spend hours every day checking tracking apps and watching footage from hidden cameras. Normal people have their own lives. I wanted to feel sorry for her. Part of me did, but the anger was still there, hot and sharp under my ribs. So what happens now? I asked. Mom looked at me with exhausted eyes. I don't know, honey. I really don't know. That was 3 days ago. I thought maybe the confrontation would be enough. Maybe some kind of turning point. Maybe we could all just move forward from there. I was so wrong. The first sign that nothing had actually changed came the very next morning. I woke up to 17 text messages from Mom, not about the tracking devices, not about the confrontation, just random stuff. Did you see that commercial for the new insurance company? The one with the talking gecko? I'm at the grocery store and they're out of the bread you like. Should I try a different location? Just saw a car that looked exactly like yours. Wasn't yours though. Wrong license plate. Are you awake yet? It's almost 9 a.m. Never mind. I see you read my messages. You must be up. What are you having for breakfast? I stared at my phone, this sick feeling building in my stomach. It was like the Mother's Day confrontation had never happened. Like we hadn't just exposed her entire surveillance operation, and she hadn't admitted to years of obsessive monitoring. I didn't respond to any of the texts. I took a shower, made coffee, tried to focus on my work emails. By noon, I had 32 messages from her. Still nothing about what we'd discussed. Just this constant stream of consciousness, like she couldn't stop herself from narrating every single thought that passed through her head. Thinking about making lasagna for dinner. Do you remember if Dad likes ricotta or cottage cheese better? There's a sale on those candles you mentioned liking. The neighbor's dog got out again. Took me 20 minutes to catch him. Why aren't you responding? Is everything okay? That last one made me pause. I could hear the anxiety creeping into her words even through text. I knew if I didn't respond soon, she'd escalate. So I sent back a simple, just busy with work, Mom. Talk later. Her response was immediate. Oh, okay, good. I was starting to worry. What are you working on? I put my phone on silent and tried to ignore it. At 4:47 p.m., there was a knock on my apartment door. I already knew who it would be before I opened it. Mom stood there with a container of cookies, smiling like this was a totally normal visit. "Hi, sweetie. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop these off. Just made them this morning." "You live 40 minutes away," I said flatly. "You're never in this neighborhood." Her smile faltered. "Well, I had some errands to run nearby." "What errands, Mom?" She looked down at the cookies. I was thinking about you and I needed to see you, to make sure you were okay." "I'm fine," I said, not moving from the doorway. "You didn't need to drive all the way over here." "I know I didn't need to," she said quietly, "but I couldn't stop thinking about it, about you. And when you didn't respond to my text for a few hours, I couldn't focus on anything else. I took the cookies because it felt mean not to, but I didn't invite her in." We stood there awkwardly for a minute. "Mom, why are you really here?" She looked at me with these lost eyes, like a kid who'd gotten separated from their parents at the mall. "I don't know," she admitted. "I just know that sitting at home, not knowing what you were doing right this second, it was making me feel like I couldn't breathe. So I got in the car and drove here, and now I'm here, and I feel better." "Doesn't that sound insane?" "I know it sounds insane." "Yeah," I said gently. "It kind of does. I'm sorry." She was crying again, tears just streaming down her face right there in my apartment hallway. "I'm sorry. I know I'm being too much. I know I need to give you space. But I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to sit with the not knowing." My neighbor across the hall opened his door, saw us, and quickly retreated back inside. Great. Now the whole building probably thought I was some kind of monster making my mom cry in the hallway. "Come inside," I said with a sigh, stepping aside. She followed me in, clutching her purse like a lifeline. I got her some water, and we sat at my small kitchen table. She kept looking around my apartment, taking in every detail like she was memorizing it. "You moved the bookshelf," she said suddenly. "Yeah, like 2 months ago. It looks better by the window." She paused. "I wouldn't have known you moved it if I'd just been checking your location." I would have missed that completely. The implications of that statement made my skin crawl. She was basically admitting that she'd been using the tracking devices to build a mental picture of my daily life, and now she was trying to fill in the gaps with actual visits. "This has to stop," I told her. "You can't just show up at my apartment every time I don't text you back immediately." "I know," she whispered. I know. But what am I supposed to do instead? Just sit at home and wonder and worry and drive myself crazy?" "That's literally what every other parent does when their kid moves out," I said. "They trust that their adult children are fine and they wait for them to call. But what do I do while I'm waiting?" The question came out raw and desperate. What do I do with all the hours in between? What do I think about? What do I focus on? I didn't have an answer for that. How do you explain to someone that they need to have their own life when they genuinely don't seem to understand what that means? She left about an hour later, and I felt exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with work or lack of sleep. It was this bone-deep weariness that came from realizing that my mother was like an addict, and I was her drug of choice. Over the next week, I started paying more attention to how Mom actually spent her days. I'd ask her about it when she called, trying to sound casual. "What'd you do today, Mom?" "Oh, you know, the usual. Some laundry, cleaned the bathroom, ran to the store." "What else?" Silence. "What do you mean, what else?" "I mean, that stuff takes maybe 2 hours total." "What did you do with the rest of your day?" More silence. I don't know. I guess I just did stuff around the house." "Why are you asking?" I started asking Dad the same kinds of questions. "What does Mom do all day while you're at work?" He thought about it. "I honestly don't know. She's always been home when I get back. Dinner's usually started or done. House is always clean. But beyond that," he shrugged. "I've never really thought about it." "Does she have friends? Hobbies? Anything she does just for herself?" Dad's expression changed, like he was really considering it for the first time. "She used to have a book club, but she quit that a few years ago. Said the other women were boring. She talked about taking a painting class once, but never actually signed up. As for friends," he trailed off. "Now that you mention it, I can't remember the last time she went out with anyone besides me or you." That sick feeling in my stomach got worse. I decided to test something. I called Mom one afternoon and asked her straight out, "What are you doing right now?" "Just watching TV." "Why? What are you watching?" Just some show. I don't know, I'm not really paying attention." "What have you been doing today?" I could hear her getting defensive. "Why are you interrogating me? Did your father put you up to this?" "No, Mom, I'm just trying to understand how you spend your time." "I spend it the same way everyone spends it," she snapped. "I do my chores, I run errands, I take care of the house. Is that not good enough for you?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean? Because it sounds like you're judging how I live my life, and honestly, that's pretty rich coming from someone who's barely been home in months." "Mom, I have to go. I have things to do." She hung up. I called Dad that night. How long does Mom usually spend on her phone? I don't know, the normal amount, I guess. Why? Can you check? Without making it obvious? He was quiet for a moment. You think she's still tracking you? I think she's doing something, and I want to know what. 2 days later, Dad called me back. You were right. She's on her phone constantly, like all the time. I started paying attention, and Jesus Christ. She must check it at least once every 5 minutes, sometimes more. What's she looking at? I don't know, she tilts it away when I get close. But earlier today, I walked into the kitchen, and her phone was on the table. She'd left to grab something from the other room, so I looked, and she was on Facebook, but not posting or anything, just scrolling through your profile, then some of your friends' profiles. Then she had like 15 tabs open on Safari, the restaurant you mentioned wanting to try, the gym you go to, some store you tagged in a photo 3 weeks ago. It's like she's researching your entire life like a hobby. My chest felt tight. That's wow. Yeah, Dad sounded as disturbed as I felt. I kept watching throughout the week. She's not just checking occasionally. She's basically spending hours every day going through your social media, your friends' pages, looking at reviews for places you've been. She's got this whole routine. Morning coffee, check your location. Wait, shit, did you turn that back on? No, I said. I haven't had it on since Mother's Day. Huh? Well, she's checking something on her phone first thing when she wakes up. Then breakfast, then more phone time. She'll do a chore or two, but between every task, she's back on her phone. It's like she can't go more than a few minutes without checking. What do you think she's checking if my location is off? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. The next day, Dad called me sounding shaken. I figured it out. She's been going through your Instagram stories, your friends' stories, looking for any glimpse of you. If you're tagged in someone's photo or story, she screenshots it. She's got a whole folder of them, and she's been searching your name on Google every few hours. Like she's expecting news articles about you or something. She's even looking at the reviews for your workplace on Google Maps, reading through them like she's going to find some mention of you in there. I felt sick. Dad, that's not normal. I know it's not normal. He sounded frustrated. Maybe at Mom, maybe at himself. I've been living with this woman for 25 years, and I'm just now realizing she has absolutely nothing going on in her life outside of monitoring us. It's like we're her full-time job. She needs therapy. She needs a lot more than therapy, Dad said darkly. But I don't even know how to bring it up without making everything worse. He didn't have to wait long. The confrontation came that weekend, and it was brutal. Dad told me later that they'd been invited to dinner at his coworker's house. Just a casual Saturday evening thing. Nothing fancy. But when he mentioned it to Mom, her face went pale. This Saturday? She asked. Yeah, this Saturday. Why? We usually have family dinner on Saturdays. We haven't had family dinner on Saturday in months, Dad pointed out. Not since our daughter moved out. It's usually just the two of us ordering takeout and watching TV. Mom's hand started fidgeting with her phone. But what if she wants to come over? What if she needs us? Then she can come over on Sunday or Friday or literally any other day. Dad was using that patient voice he always used when he was trying to stay calm. This is just one evening, honey. Tom and his wife have been asking us over for months. I don't know them that well, Mom protested. You've met them 4 or 5 times. They're nice people. And Tom mentioned his wife just started a pottery class. You were interested in pottery, remember? I could imagine Mom's expression, the way she'd look when cornered. I don't think I want to go. Why not? I don't feel like it. Is this about not wanting to leave the house? Dad asked. Because we haven't gone out socially in months. Every time I suggest something, you have an excuse. That's not true. It is true, Dad said, his patience clearly wearing thin. Last month, your sister invited us to that barbecue and you said you were too tired. Before that, it was game night at the Johnsons and you had a headache. Before that, okay, fine, I don't like going out. Mom's voice was rising. Is that what you want to hear? I don't like leaving the house for hours at a time, not knowing what's happening, not being able to check on things. Check on what things? Dad demanded. What exactly are you checking on? And that's when it all came spilling out. Mom admitted she couldn't relax when they went out because all she could think about was getting back home to check her phone. That being away from her computer and her constant monitoring routines made her anxious to the point of physical symptoms. That the idea of being at dinner with strangers, making small talk, pretending to be interested in pottery classes when all she wanted to do was refresh my Instagram page to see if I'd posted anything new. It was unbearable. You're choosing surveillance over having a life, Dad told her. You're picking isolation over connection. Do you realize that? You don't understand, Mom said. And according to Dad, she was crying again. When I'm out there, with other people, living my own life, I feel like I'm missing something important. Like something could be happening with you or with her and I wouldn't know. And I'd be the last to find out. And what kind of mother doesn't know what's going on with her own family? A mother with healthy boundaries, Dad said. That's what kind. But Mom wouldn't budge. She refused to go to dinner. Dad went alone, and when he came home around 10 p.m., he found her exactly where he'd left her, on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through what he assumed was my digital footprint. "Did you even move?" he asked her. She looked up, startled. "What? In the 4 hours I was gone? Did you even get up from this spot?" She glanced around like she was seeing the room for the first time. I don't know, I might have gotten some water. Dad told me he just stared at her, really looked at her, and felt something shift in his chest. Not love, not hate, just this overwhelming sadness. Because the woman he married, the woman who used to paint and garden and host dinner parties and laugh at stupid jokes, wasn't there anymore. She'd been replaced by this hollow shell of a person whose entire existence revolved around monitoring other people's lives because she didn't have one of her own. The breaking point came a few days later, on a Tuesday morning. Dad casually mentioned at breakfast that he was thinking about joining a weekend hiking group, just something he'd seen advertised at the gym. A bunch of middle-aged guys who went on easy trails Saturday mornings. I wasn't there, but Dad described Mom's reaction in detail later, and it was apparently devastating to watch. Her face just crumpled, not angry, not defensive, just this complete collapse of whatever composure she'd been maintaining. Her coffee mug started shaking in her hand so badly that Dad took it from her before she spilled it everywhere. "A hiking group?" she repeated, her voice flat. "Yeah, just on Saturday mornings. 2 hours, maybe 3, depending on the trail. Tom from work is part of it, and a few other guys I know." "Saturday mornings," Mom said. She was staring at the table, not blinking. "It's good exercise, and I've been meaning to get outside more. You'll be gone every Saturday morning." "Well, yeah, that's when they meet." "Without me," Dad paused. "You're welcome to come with us if you want. You know I can't keep up with that kind of hiking," Mom said, and her voice was starting to shake. "You know my knee bothers me. You're doing this on purpose." "Doing what on purpose? Leaving me alone? Spending time away from me, creating this whole separate life where I'm not included." Dad said he'd tried to stay patient. Really tried. "Honey, it's just a hiking group. A few hours on Saturday mornings. You'll barely notice I'm gone." "I'll notice," Mom said, and she was gripping the edge of the table now. "I'll notice because I'll be sitting here by myself wondering what you're doing. If you're okay, if something happened." "Nothing's going to happen on a beginner hiking trail with a group of middle-aged accountants and IT guys." "You don't know that," Mom's voice cracked. "People get hurt hiking all the time. They fall, they have heart attacks, they get lost. So you want me to never go hiking because something might possibly happen? I want you to stay home with me on Saturday mornings like you always do." "We don't do anything on Saturday mornings," Dad said, his own voice rising now. "You sleep until 9, I make coffee, we sit around in our pajamas watching TV we're not even interested in, and by noon, we've accomplished nothing except wasting half the day. That's not quality time together, that's just existing in the same space." Mom stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "Maybe that's enough for me. Did you ever think of that? Maybe I like our Saturday mornings exactly how they are." "Why?" Dad demanded. "Why do you like sitting around doing nothing?" "Because you're here." The words came out as almost a shout. "Because I know where you are, I know what you're doing. I don't have to wonder or worry or check my phone every 5 minutes hoping you'll text me that you're okay." The kitchen went silent. "Do you hear yourself?" Dad asked quietly. "Do you hear what you just said?" Mom sank back into her chair, putting her face in her hands. I know how it sounds. "You're not describing a marriage," Dad said. "You're describing a hostage situation." That's when Mom said something that Dad said. He'd never forget. "If you start doing things without me, what am I supposed to do with myself?" He didn't have an answer. How do you respond to someone who's essentially admitted that without you there to watch and monitor, they have no purpose? The hiking thing became this massive point of tension. Dad didn't back down. I was proud of him for that. He signed up for the group and went on his first hike that Saturday. Mom was a mess the entire morning, texting him every 20 minutes until he eventually stopped responding, because he was literally on a trail in the woods with spotty service. When he got home 3 hours later, sweaty and happy and energized, Mom was sitting on the couch in her pajamas, eyes red from crying, phone clutched in her hand. "I called you 12 times, she said. "I was hiking in the woods, with no service half the time." He set down his water bottle. "Did something happen? Is everything okay?" "No, nothing happened. That's the problem. Nothing happened, and I spent 3 hours completely unable to focus on anything except checking my phone to see if you texted." Dad told her she needed help. professional help. Mom said she knew, but then days went by and she didn't make an appointment. Dad offered to help her find a therapist. She said she'd do it herself, but she didn't. Meanwhile, I was dealing with my own escalation of Mom's behavior. She'd started calling me at random times during the workday, and when I didn't answer, because I was, working, she'd call again and again. One afternoon, I had 7 missed calls from her between 2 and 3 p.m. When I finally called her back, she answered on the first ring. "Oh, thank God," she breathed. I was so worried. "Mom, I was in a meeting. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I hadn't heard from you today and I got anxious. You texted me this morning and I responded." "I know, but that was 6 hours ago." I closed my eyes and counted to 5. "Mom, 6 hours is a completely normal amount of time to not talk to someone." "I know that logically," she said, and I could hear her pacing in the background. But telling myself that doesn't make the anxiety go away. I tried to distract myself with cleaning, but I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about you and wondering what you were doing and if you were okay. "I'm fine. I'm always fine." "But you don't know that you'll always be fine," Mom insisted. "Something could happen at any moment. You could get in a car accident, or there could be an emergency at your work, or you could get sick, or—" "Mom, stop, please stop." She went quiet. Then, "I can't turn it off. The worrying, it just spirals and spirals until I hear your voice and know you're okay." "That's not healthy," I said as gently as I could. "That's not normal worry. That's obsessive." "I know." Her voice was small. "I know it's obsessive, but knowing that doesn't make it stop." After that conversation, I made a decision. I started documenting everything. Every text, every call, every unexpected visit. I wanted a record, something concrete I could point to if we ever needed to do some kind of intervention. What I found was honestly terrifying. In 1 week, Mom texted me 247 times. That's an average of 35 texts per day. Some were questions. "What did you have for lunch?" Some were observations. "The weather looks bad where you are. Are you driving?" Some were just random thoughts. "Remember that teacher you had in 3rd grade? I wonder what she's doing now." She called 18 times in that same week. I answered maybe half of those calls, and they were all variations of the same conversation. Her needing reassurance that I was okay, me providing that reassurance, her admitting she knew she was being excessive, neither of us knowing how to break the pattern. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. I have this friend, Jenna, who I've known since college. We're not super close anymore, but we follow each other on social media and occasionally grab coffee when our schedules align. One day, Jenna texted me, "Hey, random question, but does your mom follow me on Instagram? I got a follow request from someone with your last name." I check. It was Mom. She'd created an Instagram account under a slightly altered version of her name and was following not just Jenna, but about 40 other people. All of them, my friends, coworkers, or acquaintances. When I confronted her about it, she didn't even try to deny it. "I just wanted to see what you were up to," she said. "You don't post very often on your own page, but your friends tag you in stuff sometimes, and I like seeing what you're doing." "That's stalking, Mom. That's literally stalking my friends so you can keep tabs on me. I'm not stalking anyone. It's a public social media platform. Anyone can follow anyone. But you made a fake account, so I wouldn't know you were doing it." "I didn't make a fake account. I just didn't use my full name." "That's not the same thing." "It's the same thing." I was pacing my apartment now, phone pressed to my ear. "It's the same controlling, obsessive behavior. You're not even trying to hide it anymore. What do you want me to do?" Mom's voice went sharp. "Just sit here knowing nothing about your life? Just trust that you'll tell me things?" "Yes," I practically shouted. "That's exactly what normal parents do. They trust their adult children to share what they want to share." "Well, maybe I'm not a normal parent," Mom shot back. "Maybe I love you too much to just sit back and be shut out of your life." "This isn't love, Mom. This is control. There's a difference." She hung up on me. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then opened my laptop and started researching therapists who specialized in anxiety and obsessive behavior. I emailed the information to Dad with a simple message. "She needs professional help. This isn't sustainable." Dad responded an hour later. "I know. I've been thinking the same thing. But she has to want to get help. I can't force her." I called him. "What if we both sit her down, like an intervention?" "I don't know if that would help or make it worse," Dad said. He sounded exhausted. "Every time I bring up therapy, she gets defensive and says I'm making her out to be crazy." "She's not crazy," I said, "but she's not okay either." "I know." There was a long pause. "I'm starting to think about what my life would look like if I left." Those words hit me harder than I expected. "Dad, I'm not saying I'm going to," he clarified quickly. I'm just thinking about it. What it would be like to live alone, to not have someone constantly monitoring my every move, to not feel guilty every time I want to do something for myself. That's not healthy either, I pointed out. You shouldn't have to fantasize about leaving just to feel like you have autonomy. I know, but I can't keep living like this, and I can't force her to change. So what does that leave? I didn't have an answer. A few days later, Dad called me with something he'd noticed that made me feel physically ill. I was looking at our phone bill online, he said. Just routine stuff, checking the charges. And I noticed something weird. Your mom's data usage has been increasing steadily over the past year, like significantly. She's using 10, sometimes 15 gigabytes a month. That's a lot, I said, though I wasn't sure what normal data usage was. It's way more than she needs for just texting and checking Facebook, Dad confirmed. So I got curious. I asked her what she's been doing on her phone that uses so much data. What did she say? She got defensive immediately, said it was none of my business that everyone uses data. So I pressed a little, asked if maybe we needed to upgrade our plan or something. She said no, the plan was fine, and could I please drop it? So you obviously didn't drop it. Obviously, I could hear the grimness in his voice. I waited until she went to bed, and I looked at her phone. I know her passcode. She's had the same one for years. And what I found, he trailed off. Dad, what did you find? She's got this whole system. She's subscribed to these websites that aggregate social media posts from specific users. So she's paying for notifications every time you or anyone in your circle posts anything. She's got Google Alerts set up for your name, our address, my workplace. She's using these tracking apps that supposedly help parents keep tabs on their kids, except you're 22 years old. And she's got browser history showing she's been looking up public records, property records, trying to find information on your friends, their families. I felt like I might throw up. This is so much worse than I thought. There's more, Dad said quietly. I found saved searches on LinkedIn for your coworkers, saved eBay searches for the exact model of laptop you own. Like she's trying to stay updated on its market value or something. Amazon wishlist titled for her. That's just full of stuff you've mentioned liking. She's been building this comprehensive database of your life, and I don't think she even realizes how insane it is. What are you gonna do? I don't know yet, but I can't pretend I didn't see it. That conversation was on a Tuesday. By Friday, things had escalated in a way none of us expected. Dad confronted Mom about the phone thing. She initially denied it, then minimized it, then finally broke down and admitted she'd been keeping track of things. When Dad asked why, she gave him the same answer she'd given me. She couldn't stand not knowing. But this isn't just casual interest, Dad said, according to his retelling. This is obsessive. You're spending hours every single day researching our daughter's life like you're a private investigator. This is not normal parental concern. Mom's response was chilling. Maybe not, but it's the only thing that makes me feel like I have a purpose. When I'm tracking, when I'm checking, when I'm making sure everyone's okay, at least I'm doing something. At least I matter. You matter anyway, Dad told her. You matter because you're my wife, because you're her mother, not because you're monitoring us 24/7. But what if that's not enough? Mom asked. What if just being your wife, just being her mother, isn't actually enough to fill a whole life? What if I need more than that, but I don't know what more looks like? And that's when Dad realized the full scope of the problem. Mom wasn't just anxious or controlling. She had built her entire identity around being needed. And now that I was an adult and Dad was establishing boundaries, she was facing this existential crisis where she genuinely didn't know who she was, without the role of caretaker, monitor, protector. You need therapy, Dad told her again. Professional help. I can't fix this. She can't fix this. You need someone trained to help you figure out who you are outside of us. Mom finally agreed. She made an appointment with a therapist for the following week. Dad and I both felt cautiously hopeful. But then, Mom missed the appointment. She called the office and canceled the morning of, saying she wasn't feeling well. She rescheduled for 2 weeks later, then canceled that one too. And the next one. I'm not ready, she told Dad when he confronted her about it. I know I need help, but I'm not ready to hear someone tell me I'm broken. No one's going to tell you you're broken. They will though, Mom insisted. That's what therapy is. Someone pointing out everything wrong with you and making you relive all your worst moments and admitting out loud that you're fundamentally damaged in some way. That's not what therapy is, Dad said. But Mom wasn't listening. She convinced herself that getting help meant admitting defeat, and she'd rather maintain her surveillance habits than face whatever would come out in a therapist's office. Meanwhile, I was noticing something else disturbing. I'd been keeping track of when Mom contacted me versus when something good or bad happened in my life, and the pattern was undeniable. When I posted on social media about getting a small bonus at work, Mom's response was a single emoji. That was it. No call, no text beyond that emoji, nothing. But when I mentioned in passing during a phone call that I'd had a disagreement with my boss, suddenly Mom was fully engaged. She wanted to know every detail. What was the disagreement about? What did I say? What did he say? How did I feel? Was I going to escalate it to HR? Had I thought about looking for a new job? She called me 3 times over the next 2 days to check in about the boss situation. She sent articles about dealing with difficult managers. She asked if I wanted her to drive over so we could talk about it in person. The contrast was stark and disturbing. My successes barely registered, but my problems made her light up like she'd found her purpose. I mentioned this to Dad, who immediately said, "Oh my God, she does the same thing to me." "What do you mean?" "Last month I got that commendation at work, remember? The thing where my manager praised me in front of the whole department? I came home excited to tell your mom, and she literally said, 'That's nice,' and changed the subject within 2 minutes. But last week when I mentioned my back was hurting, she spent an hour researching chiropractors and physical therapists and asking me questions about my pain level and flexibility and whether I'd tried heat or ice. She needs us to need her," I said slowly, the realization settling over me like a cold blanket. She doesn't want us to suffer, but she needs us to have problems because that gives her something to solve. That gives her a role. Jesus, Dad breathed. "You're right. That's exactly what it is." We sat with that knowledge for a while, both of us processing what it meant. Mom wasn't consciously trying to keep us down or hoping we'd fail, but she'd built her entire sense of self-worth around being the person who helped, who fixed, who solved problems. And when we didn't have problems, she didn't know what her purpose was. A week later, I tested this theory without really meaning to. I called Mom and told her I was thinking about going back to school to get my master's degree. It was something I'd been considering for a while, a genuine positive step in my life. Mom's response, "Oh, okay, that sounds like a lot of work. Are you sure you have time for that with your job?" Flat. Disinterested. The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes before she said she had to go. 2 days later, I called and mentioned I'd been having headaches lately. Mom was immediately alert. "What kind of headaches? How often? Have you seen a doctor? Do you think it could be stress? Are you getting enough sleep? Have you tried cutting out caffeine? What about your screen time? Are you on your computer too much?" She called me back that evening with a list of neurologists in my area. She'd researched their credentials, read patient reviews, and ranked them by both proximity to my apartment and quality of care. "I made a spreadsheet," she said proudly, "so you can compare them easily." I thanked her and hung up feeling sick. She'd spent hours on this, hours researching doctors for headaches that I'd honestly exaggerated because I wanted to see how she'd react. And her reaction confirmed everything. Mom was more emotionally invested in my problems than my progress. I shared this with Dad, who at this point was starting to look genuinely haggard. The stress of living with Mom, of navigating her obsessive behaviors while trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy, was clearly taking its toll. "I can't do this much longer," he admitted to me over the phone one night. "I love your mother. I've loved her for 25 years. But I'm starting to realize that love isn't enough when the other person refuses to help themselves." "What are you thinking?" I asked, though I had a feeling I knew. "I'm thinking about separation," he said quietly. "Not divorce, not yet, but maybe living apart for a while, giving both of us space to figure out what we actually want." "How do you think she'll react?" Dad laughed bitterly. "She'll fall apart, completely. She'll spiral into full panic mode. And part of me feels cruel even considering it because I know what it'll do to her. But another part of me thinks maybe that's what she needs. Maybe hitting rock bottom is the only thing that'll force her to actually get help. Or maybe it'll make her worse," I said. "Maybe," he sighed. "I genuinely don't know anymore. All I know is that I wake up every morning feeling like I'm suffocating. And that can't be what marriage is supposed to feel like." We didn't have an answer. There was no good solution. Stay and enable her behavior? Leave and potentially trigger a complete breakdown? Force her into therapy somehow? None of it felt right. Then something happened that changed the dynamic entirely. Mom found out about Dad's hiking group. Not just that he joined, but who else was in it. And one of the members was a woman named Lisa, someone Dad worked with who I'd met a few times and seemed perfectly nice and normal. Mom latched onto this information like a drowning person grabbing a life raft. "There's a woman in your hiking group," she said to Dad one evening. Not a question, a statement. "There are several women in the hiking group," Dad replied evenly. "It's not a men-only club, but Lisa specifically. She's the one you've mentioned from work. Yes, Lisa's in the group, so are Tom and Jennifer and Mike and about 8 other people. What's your point? Mom's face went tight. My point is that you're spending every Saturday morning hiking with a woman I barely know. I'm spending Saturday mornings hiking with a group of people, one of whom happens to be a woman you barely know. Does she ride with you? Or does she drive separately? Dad stared at her. What does that have to do with anything? I just want to know if you're carpooling with her, if you're spending extra alone time together in the car, before and after the hikes. And just like that, Mom had found her next obsession. If she couldn't track Dad through devices anymore, she'd track him through suspicion. If she couldn't find evidence of actual wrongdoing, she'd create scenarios in her head where wrongdoing was possible. Over the next 2 weeks, Mom became fixated on Lisa. She looked her up on Facebook, scrolled through her photos, tried to find connections between her and Dad. She asked Dad pointed questions about his interactions with Lisa, whether they ever talked one-on-one, whether Lisa was married, whether she seemed happy in her marriage. Dad finally had enough. "You're doing it again," he told her. "You're building a case for something that doesn't exist. Lisa is a colleague. That's it. We've probably had a total of 20 minutes of one-on-one conversation in the entire time I've known her, and most of that was about quarterly reports and budget allocations. But she could be interested in you," Mom insisted. "You don't know what she's thinking, even if she were, which she's not. It wouldn't matter because I'm not interested in her," Dad said firmly. "I'm interested in hiking, in getting exercise, in having a hobby that gets me out of the house for a few hours a week. That's it." But Mom couldn't let it go. She started timing Dad's hikes, noting if he came home even 10 minutes later than expected. She'd smell his clothes when he threw them in the laundry, looking for unfamiliar perfume. She asked him to see his phone, to check if Lisa had texted him. "This is exactly what you admitted to on Mother's Day," Dad reminded her. "You said you've been trying to catch me cheating for 9 years because it's easier than facing your own unhappiness. And now you're doing it again, except this time it's not even subtle. You're not even pretending it's about intuition or concern. You're just straight up paranoid." Mom started crying, which had become her default response to confrontation. "I can't help it. When you're gone, all I can think about is what you might be doing, who you might be with, whether you're telling me the truth. So come with me," Dad interrupted. "Come on the hikes. Meet everyone. See for yourself that it's just a bunch of middle-aged people walking on trails and talking about boring stuff. I can't keep up with the hiking." "Then wait in the parking lot, sit in the car, and read a book. I don't care. But stop building these elaborate cheating scenarios in your head when you could just come and see the reality for yourself." Mom never took him up on the offer because, I realized, she didn't actually want to know the truth. She wanted the anxiety, the suspicion, the constant checking and monitoring. It gave her something to do, something to focus on, a purpose. And that's when I fully understood just how trapped we all were. One evening, I got a call from Dad. It was late, almost 11 p.m., which was unusual. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and you're probably going to be upset." "Okay," I braced myself. "I've woken up several times over the past few months to find your mom sitting in the living room in the dark, just sitting there, scrolling through her phone. When I asked what she's doing, she says she couldn't sleep. But tonight I actually looked at what she was viewing, and she's got this whole archive of photos and videos of you from when you were younger. She's organized them by year and category, and she just sits there in the dark, scrolling through them, sometimes watching the same video over and over. Tonight it was this clip from your high school graduation. She must have watched it 15 times while I was standing there." I felt cold all over. "Did you ask her why?" "Yeah, she said she was remembering when you needed her. Those were her exact words. She's mourning the time when you were dependent on her because now she doesn't know what her role is supposed to be." Neither of us spoke for a moment. "That's really sad," I finally said. "It's heartbreaking," Dad agreed, "but it's also deeply unhealthy. She's so stuck in the past, in this version of you that doesn't exist anymore, that she can't engage with who you actually are now. She wants you to be 16 again, living at home, needing her help with homework and ride to soccer practice and advice about boys. She doesn't know how to be a mother to an independent adult." "Most parents figure it out," I said. "Most parents have other things in their lives," Dad countered. "Hobbies, friends, careers they care about. Your mom has us. That's it. And when we don't need her in the ways we used to, her whole identity crumbles." I thought about that a lot over the next few days, about how Mom had spent over 2 decades building her entire sense of self around being a mother and a wife. And now that those roles had evolved into something less hands-on, she was completely lost. I decided to try one more time to help her. I called and asked if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. She agreed immediately, sounding almost pathetically grateful for the invitation. We met at a cafe near her house. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees in front of her. She'd ordered for both of us, getting my drink exactly right, because of course she remembered my order. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Of course, sweetie, I'm always happy to see you." She was smiling, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She looked tired, actually tired, not just the standard middle-aged tired, but deeply exhausted in a way that seemed to go bone deep. I decided to just go for it. "Mom, I want to talk to you about getting help. Real help, like consistent. Therapy with someone who specializes in anxiety and obsessive behaviors." Her smile faded. "We've been over this. Just hear me out," I interrupted gently. "Please." She pressed her lips together but nodded. "I've been doing some research," I continued. "And what you're experiencing, the constant need to know where everyone is, the inability to focus on anything except monitoring us, the anxiety when you don't have access to that information. It's not just normal worry. It's called obsessive-compulsive tendencies, or maybe anxiety disorder, or honestly, maybe a combination of things. But whatever it is, it's treatable." "I don't want to be medicated," Mom said immediately. "Medication might not even be necessary," I said. "A lot of people manage these symptoms with therapy alone, cognitive behavioral therapy specifically. It helps you retrain your brain to recognize when thoughts are becoming obsessive and gives you tools to redirect them." Mom was looking down at her coffee cup, turning it slowly in her hands. "The thing is," I said carefully, "this isn't just affecting you anymore. It's affecting me and Dad too. We love you, but we can't keep living like this. Dad's miserable. I'm stressed all the time, and you're clearly not happy either." "I know I'm not happy," Mom said quietly, "but I don't know how to be happy. I don't know what that would even look like for me at this point." "That's exactly what therapy would help you figure out," I pressed. "A good therapist would work with you to understand who you are outside of being a mom and a wife, to help you develop your own interests, your own life, your own identity." "But what if there's nothing there?" Mom looked up at me and her eyes were wet. "What if I dig around in therapy, trying to find out who I am, and it turns out I'm nobody, just this empty person who only knows how to exist in relation to other people?" "That's not true," I said firmly. "You're a whole person. You just haven't given yourself permission to explore that in a really long time." We talked for another hour. I suggested activities she could try: pottery classes, book clubs, volunteering at the animal shelter, anything to get her out of the house and interacting with people who weren't me or Dad. She listened, nodded, even seemed genuinely interested in a few suggestions. But when I asked her to commit to making a therapy appointment, she hesitated. "I'll think about it," she said. "Mom, I promise I'll think about it," she insisted. "Just give me a little more time to process everything. This is a lot." I left that coffee date feeling frustrated but not hopeless. At least she was hearing me. At least the conversation was happening. But 3 weeks passed and Mom didn't make an appointment. When I asked her about it, she said she'd been too busy. When I pointed out that she'd literally told Dad she had nothing to do all day, she got defensive and said I didn't understand how overwhelming it all felt. And then something shifted in me, some fundamental understanding that I couldn't save her. I couldn't force her to get help. I couldn't make her want to change. All I could do was protect myself. So I started pulling back. Not dramatically, not with any big announcement, just slowly creating distance. I stopped answering every text immediately. I let calls go to voicemail sometimes. When Mom asked detailed questions about my day, I gave short, vague answers. When she tried to invite herself over, I was suddenly busy. Mom noticed, of course. She always noticed. "You're avoiding me," she said during one phone call. "I'm not avoiding you. I'm just living my life. You used to tell me things. Now I have to drag information out of you." "I tell you what's relevant," I said. "I don't need to give you a minute-by-minute breakdown of my existence. I'm your mother. I'm supposed to know what's going on with you. You're supposed to trust that I'll tell you what you need to know," I corrected. "There's a difference." She didn't like that. She started pushing harder, calling more frequently, showing up unannounced. I started ignoring the door when I saw her car pull up. I turned off read receipts on my texts so she couldn't see when I'd viewed her messages. It felt cruel, but it also felt necessary, like I was finally setting the boundaries I should have established years ago. Dad noticed the change too. "You're pulling away from her," he said during one of our calls. "I have to," I said. "It's either that or let her consume my entire life." "I get it," Dad said, and he sounded sad. I've been thinking about doing the same thing. Have you thought any more about the separation idea? Every day, he admitted. But I keep chickening out. I know what it'll do to her, and I can't quite bring myself to be the one who pulls the trigger. We were both trapped in different ways. Me trying to escape while feeling guilty about it. Dad wanting to leave but unable to because of guilt and obligation. Then Mom did something that forced both our hands. It was a random Tuesday afternoon when Dad called me, his voice shaking with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Anger, maybe, mixed with disbelief. "You need to hear this," he said. "I need to tell someone before I lose my mind." What happened? I came home early from work, had a headache, wasn't feeling great. When I walked in, your mom was at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She didn't hear me come in, and I saw what she was looking at. What was it? She'd hired a private investigator. Dad's voice was flat, like he was in shock. To follow me, to follow you. She'd been paying someone for the past 3 months to track our movements, take photos, compile reports on our daily activities. I actually couldn't breathe for a second. She what? There were reports on her laptop, detailed ones, times and locations, descriptions of who we talked to, photos of us going about our normal lives. The investigator even noted the route I took to work, the restaurants I went to for lunch, the people I had coffee with. Oh my God, she'd spent thousands of dollars on this. Dad continued, his voice rising. Thousands. Money from our joint account that I just assumed was going to groceries and household stuff. She's been hiring someone to surveil us because apparently her own surveillance wasn't enough. What did you do? I confronted her, right there, asked her what the hell she was thinking. And you want to know what she said? He laughed, but it sounded broken. She said she just needed to be sure. That's it. I just needed to be sure. When I asked what she needed to be sure about, she couldn't even give me a straight answer. She just kept saying she needed to know, needed to be certain, needed to verify. Dad, that's insane, he finished. That's insane. I know, and I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I can't live with someone who trusts me so little that she pays strangers to watch me like I'm some kind of criminal. What are you going to do? I'm leaving, he said simply. Tonight, I'm packing a bag and I'm going to stay with Tom from work for a while. Maybe longer. I don't know, but I can't stay in this house. How did she react when you said that? She's locked herself in the bedroom. I can hear her crying, and part of me wants to comfort her, to tell her it'll be okay, but I can't, because it's not okay. None of this is okay. I felt tears running down my own face. I'm sorry, Dad. Me too. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry I didn't do this sooner. I'm sorry I let it get this bad. I'm sorry you had to grow up with this level of surveillance and thought it was normal. It's not your fault, I said. Isn't it though? I enabled her. I saw the warning signs and I ignored them because it was easier than dealing with her anxiety and paranoia. I'm as much to blame as she is. We talked for a few more minutes before he had to go, said he needed to pack before Mom came out of the bedroom and tried to convince him to stay. An hour later, I got a call from Mom. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. He left me. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. Your father left me and it's all my fault. Mom, I know what I did was wrong, she continued, words tumbling out between sobs. I know hiring someone to follow you both was crazy. I know I crossed every line, but I couldn't stop myself. The not knowing was killing me, and I thought if I just had proof, if I could just see what you were both doing when you weren't with me, then maybe I could relax. Maybe I could stop being so anxious all the time. Did it work? I asked quietly. Did getting those reports make you feel better? She went silent, except for her crying. I didn't think so. I said, because it's not about actually knowing, Mom. It's about the compulsion to know. You could have cameras on every corner of my life and you'd still be anxious because the problem isn't lack of information. The problem is that you've convinced yourself you need to control everything and everyone around you to feel safe. I don't know how to stop, Mom whispered. You go to therapy, I said, my voice harder than I intended. You make an appointment, you show up, and you do the work. That's how you stop. There's no magic fix, no shortcut. You have to actually commit to getting help. But what if it's too late? What if I've ruined everything? Maybe you have, I said honestly. Maybe Dad won't come back. Maybe I'll never fully trust you again. Maybe you've damaged these relationships beyond repair. But the only way to find out is to actually try to change. Mom cried harder. I stayed on the line but didn't say anything else. What else was there to say? I'd been telling her the same things for months, and she hadn't listened. Maybe she'd listen now, maybe not. Either way, I was done making it my responsibility. After she hung up, I sat on my couch for a long time, just thinking about my childhood, about all the times Mom had just known things, about how I thought it was love, this intense need she had to be involved in in every aspect of my life, about how long it took me to realize that love and control aren't the same thing. I thought about Dad, packing his bags in a house he'd lived in for 2 decades, finally choosing his own well-being over his wife's anxiety, about how long he'd stayed, how many years he'd sacrificed trying to keep the peace. And I thought about Mom, alone in that house, surrounded by all her tracking devices and surveillance reports, finally facing the emptiness she'd been running from for years. The next few weeks were messy. Dad stayed with his coworker. Mom spiraled into a depression so severe that her sister had to come stay with her. I fielded calls from various relatives, all of them wanting to know what happened, if there was any way to fix it, whether Dad was really serious about separating. I told them all the same thing. This wasn't my problem to fix. Mom needed professional help, and until she actually got it, nothing would change. Some of them understood. Some of them thought I was being too harsh, that family should stick together, that marriage was about working through hard times. I stopped answering calls from the ones who thought I should convince Dad to go back. Mom did eventually make a therapy appointment. Dad moving out was apparently the rock bottom she needed. She started seeing someone twice a week, and from what her sister told me, she was actually engaging with the process. But here's the thing about people changing. It's slow. It's not dramatic. It's not like she went to 3 therapy sessions and suddenly became a completely different person with healthy coping mechanisms and appropriate boundaries. She still texted me too much. She still called when I didn't respond fast enough. She still clearly struggled with not knowing what I was doing. Every moment of every day, but she was trying. At least I could see that she was trying. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to like and subscribe to not miss the next story.